Blog Talk Radio.
The purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. Purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. You're next to me. You're next to me.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host and founder of Alzheimer's Speaks Advocacy Group, Lori LeBay. Today is going to be a great show. We're going to be talking about a new film that is launching, and then we've got a wonderful author here who's going to share her journey that she had through dementia regarding her mother and becoming a mother. So it's a very interesting story. I think both of these you'll find very compelling. For those of you that are new to our show, Alzheimer's Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We're located here in Minnesota in the Twin Cities, but we like our voice to be heard around the world, and we know that you're sharing it due to the fact that we were named the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare in Dr. Oz. So I really want to thank everybody for their clicks and likes and tweets and shares. It really makes a huge, huge impact. And, we just have to connect and share the knowledge. Here on Alzheimer's Speaks, we really believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge that's available to us and having these everyday conversations like we have on the radio about dementia, that we're going to be able to remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those live a much better life with disease, as well as those that are caring for them. We all deserve to live purpose-filled lives, and it's really been an honor and a privilege to be in this role and to be able to meet so many fantastic people and hear of so many resources, products, services, and tools that are out there that I know I sure didn't know about on my own journey with my mother for 30 years. So I know the value of sharing the knowledge. So again, I want to thank you. If you haven't liked our homepage, if you can please do that. We've got a couple of different pages on Facebook as well that you can like too. And again, just sharing that knowledge. You never know who in your sphere of influence is in need, because so many times people don't talk about dementia because of the embarrassment and the shame, and we have to rule that out. We've got to get rid of that and make people comfortable having this conversation so that we can get them to the resources that are out there. I do invite everyone to join the conversation, and you can do that in a couple of different forms. You can call in live to the show at 714-364-4757. That's 714-364-4757. Or you can utilize the chat box. And, I will be monitoring that throughout the show, and we can have a conversation in that format as well. So either way works just perfectly fine. Before I introduce our guest, and we're still waiting for him to be able to connect, he's coming from India. And so we're really excited to have him on, but it complicates things a little bit with our Blog Talk Radio, because he has to get on Skype, and it gets a little bit more complicated in terms of process there. So I know he'll be with us shortly. I know he's there, so he's just maneuvering the ropes. So in the meantime, I'm going to just do a shout out to some of my favorite organizations that I think are really helpful for people. The Alzheimer's Disease International is the association of all the Alzheimer's associations around the world. So no matter where you are, you can go to ADI and find the information that will help you find maybe a support group, or maybe it's a counseling service, or just general information. ADI also has all of the global information and updates and research. So it's a fascinating place to be able to gather and sift through data. The Purple Angel Project, very close to my heart. Norms McNamara and Jane Moore really getting this purple angel out. It's the new global symbol for dementia. It is available not only to organizations and communities, but also to individuals to be able to use this symbol. And if you're interested in that, you can go to alzheimersspeaks.com and go to our About page. And from there, you just click on the purple angel. You'll get some data, and I'll be more than glad to share information for you. I feel like I got a little frog in my throat here this morning. Not quite sure what's going on, so bear with me. With the Purple Angel, we are in the process of updating the poster to be kind of U.S. friendly, and Alzheimer's Speaks is going to be the U.S. launch for that. So we're getting close to getting that all formulated. So just to let you know that, very, very excited about that. If there are any corporations out there that would like to be a corporate sponsor of the Purple Angel, please get a hold of me, because we are looking for some funding so that we can help get stickers and things out there. We've got a couple of people in the works, but we're always looking for more. So please reach out to me at Lori@alzheimersspeaks.com. Also would like to give a shout out to the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. They are an absolutely fantastic association that will give you information on more of a holistic approach. So their pillars are really about exercise and food and meditation. They do some great educational formats that I think will be very, very helpful. And then also, don't forget about the Lewy Body Association. The Lewy Body Association is the specific association for that particular type of dementia, and they're just loaded with great, great information there. So check them out. You may be dealing with frontal temporal degeneration or dementia, and again, there are groups out there for that. There's also the National Aphasia Association, which deals when people are having a difficult time with their speech, and they have some great ideas for that. Many times we're looking for ways to connect with people, and I know with my own mother, music was just a fabulous way to engage with her. Even in her end stages of the disease, that music still, you could see it just ignite in her eyes, where there was a connection and a memory attached to that. And Music First with Choral Health has kind of prescriptions for music that can help change our mood. It can elevate us to wake up in the morning, or put us to sleep, or help us eat, or calm down. So music's a great, great trigger for us, and it's one of those things that I think is very undervalued. So check out Music First with Choral Health, and I'm just going to spell choral, C-O-R-O, Choral Health. Puzzle with me with Jane Snyder. She's just done some wonderful things. Again, had a family member with dementia, and decided that they liked puzzles, but the puzzles were just too big in terms of number of pieces and too small. And so she's made puzzles that are more adult appropriate, as well as larger pieces and fewer pieces, so they're easier for people to be able to deal with. Jiminy Wickets is a croquet game which has been adapted by James Creasy, and again is a wonderful, wonderful way for people to be able to connect and actually to be able to use this on an intergenerational level as well. And so that's very, very fun to be able to see that at play as well. We're still waiting for our first guest to call in, but in the meantime here, I'm going to go ahead and pull in Michelle. Michelle is our intern at Alzheimer's Speaks. How are you doing today, Michelle?
Good, thanks for having me.
Well, good. Anything new with you going on?
Not a whole lot. Working on grad school applications and working.
Okay. Do you know which schools you want to get into? Which ones are, because you're going for gerontology for your master's, correct?
Yep. I'm, the ones I'm applying to right now are Mankato, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the University of Minnesota.
Okay. Well, that'll be very, very exciting for you to take that next leap, and that'll be a wonderful, wonderful step for you. For those of you that don't know Michelle, she's a pretty amazing individual. She writes for our blog. She also has opened up a memory cafe, so she's just taken a lot of initiatives, and so it's just been very, very fun to watch her step through things and maneuver her way. She works down at Northfield Senior Center.
The Northfield Senior Center.
Yep. So I think in the meantime, while we're waiting for Vishaal to see if he can connect, he seems to be getting an error, so we'll just have to have him keep trying. It's kind of a complicated system to click on the Skype button, and then there's a bunch of buttons that pop up, and he should be able to get in. So we'll just keep watching for things with him. But in the meantime, one of the things that I would like to bring up, and we'll see if we can come to any thought process on this. I recently had a friend whose sister went missing. And wandering is such a big issue when it comes to dementia. And she wandered away from an assisted living. And what shocked me here, and this was in Minnesota, there doesn't seem to be any protocols for a missing vulnerable adult. And I'm just wondering if any of our listeners out there have run into this situation or are familiar with it in their town. I have been absolutely flabbergasted. This woman has now been missing for 13 days. A press release and posters didn't even get out till, I think, day 9 or 10. And it just seems very strange to me. She needs medications that she's not on, and I would love to hear from any listeners if you have run into that situation at all. If anyone has any comment on that, how a missing person is dealt with in their own community. And while we're waiting to see if any listeners call in or make some comments, Michelle, have you run into that before?
My grandpa got walked away once, but he got stuck in the elevator. So they called my mom, let him know that they couldn't find him. But within, a short amount of time, someone said there's someone in the elevator just kind of riding it. And it was my grandpa. But other than that, I haven't, not personally at least, I haven't experienced it. Did they at least notify the family right away?
Well, they notified the family, and that was about it. And apparently assisted livings just need to call the police to report it. And after that, that's about it. And I had gone up. I was traveling. I was out of town, and I ended up going up to this town with my friend. And I was kind of surprised how many people hadn't been informed that she was missing, like social worker and her rep payee, where she gets her money from, or her bank, or her doctor. And I just thought, what's going on? Why? These are key people, and there's a lot of homeless in this particular area, and it's a very sprawled out area as well. And there's just so many different variables of what could happen to somebody. And we started playing out, did she want to leave, and does she not want to be found? Is she still in the state? Did she walk away and maybe fall and get hurt and nobody knows? Or, did she have a heart attack, or did she get abducted? I mean, there's so many different variables out there, and it was really quite shocking to me, the lack of protocol to be put in place, and the burden that's really placed on a very stressed family situation. And so I think it's so important for people to have the conversation about this. What is going on, and how does it come into play? And like I said, I've been in healthcare for a long time, and that we've got the Amber Alerts for the kids, and that seems to work really well. And I know that there's Silver Alerts out there, and I thought everybody had the Silver Alerts, and so I'm kind of on a mission now to really do some heavy checking and start talking about this, because it's just, you can't wait that long when somebody's missing. And then in the heat, we've had just extreme heat and humidity here too. When she was first missing, I mean, somebody could get dehydrated, and I mean, the list just kind of goes on and on and on, and just a very, very sad situation, with all of that. So maybe that's something you can do a paper on there, Michelle, when you get into grad school and change the world. You pick up issues and kind of go after them. So that might be a good one, So that would be wonderful. Well, I've told Vishaal to see if he can close out and come back in. And he said that he can see the Skype button and he can hear us, but he said he's getting an error, so I don't really quite know what is going on there. So we'll just continue to kind of fill air, and hopefully he'll be able to get in. When we do these with people out of the country, we always do a test, and of course the test always works just fine. And then we go live, and then there's a little snafu. So we'll just do the best we can on that. I think what we'll do is talk a little bit about. I'll give you a little bit of information about Vishaal here, and we'll see what happens. And he basically is a filmmaker and is just passionate, about being involved in dementia, really has seen a need for this. He also loves to paint, and he's the chairperson of the Cinematic Arts Production over in India, and then he is the founder of Vishaal Nityanand Films. And has just this film, I've seen a trailer of it. I think it's going to be really quite good. He's made a lot of documentaries based on social and environmental issues. One was called Farmer in the High-Tech World, and that was received really well. And then in 2011, he made a film called Casa, which won the Best of Festival along with Best Story Award by the 6 CMS Association. So his he's done just a lot of a nice variety of things, which is just fantastic that he's able to participate and do things in. So very, very fun, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to connect with him shortly. Michelle, can you talk a little bit about your Memory Cafe and how that's been going since you just started? What was that like to go through that process, and tell people, how long you've been doing it, and what kind of response you're getting.
Yeah. I think in a couple of weeks it'll be our 4th meeting, so 4 months now. Our numbers have held pretty steady at about 12 now for the last few meetings. We've had really good discussion right off the bat. That was probably my biggest fear starting it, was that I'd get a group that didn't talk very much, which doesn't seem to be a problem in my group. But yeah, they love it. They really want more people to join, and we've already done some hard-hitting issues like donating your body to science and stuff. So it's going really well, I think. I don't know. We're going to promote it a little more and see if we can get some more people. And we have a couple of people who want to split into another group, but it would be way too small at this point. So if anyone's interested, we're in Northfield, and we meet the 3rd Wednesday.
Wonderful. I was just at the Episcopal Homes here in St. Paul, and they just rolled out their cafe yesterday. And so that was fun. And they had, I want to say there was close to a dozen people for the first one. So that was really exciting, again, to be able to see them hold that kind of space. And it was fun to be there for the first kickoff. It's just always, just for me, such an honor to be involved with that. Very, very, very fun. I do have a comment from Salish, who's over in India, and he's just doing some fascinating work over there. And he just said he's so excited for this film because it's such a good media to create mass awareness. And he said it's really, in India, they really need a full-fledged film on Alzheimer's to reach out to families. And thinks that it will really, really help. Vishaal is getting back to me. He says he's still trying, seems to be in error. So I'm kind of reading his notes as I go here. We'll kind of see. Vishaal, you do not need to register. Remember, just click through those boxes because you already have Skype. So just keep clicking yes, and it should plug you right through. So just keep trying on that. Let's see. Salisha is saying that there was a big film called Tatmatra, and it was in a different language, which created a big wake of awareness, which was great. And so I think the more that is out there, the better. Salisha's just doing such wonderful, wonderful work over there in India. It's just kind of amazing what all he has been able to accomplish and done. And Salish, please feel free to ask any questions that you want. He works with the Silver Inning Foundation, and he's a geriatric consultant for them. So just does. Again, fantastic work. It's been fun to watch him on Facebook, what all he is doing over there. So I'm just going to look at our chat box here and see if we've got any other comments. It looks like we got a lot of people out here, but we got a little sleepy group. We can kind of do a little open mic session here if people have some topics that they want to talk about until we can get until we can get our guest online here. Otherwise, we'll have to fill air here for 40 minutes. Hopefully, he'll be able to get through. I'm not quite sure what the issue is, but technology at its finest, we never quite know. Salish was saying that in this film that they had over in India, they had a big star that acted in the film, and that was that's really a great way to be able to connect with the audience. And I guess he's actually talking to regarding Vishaal's film, and he feels will really help them reach a larger audience. So that's absolutely fantastic. Has anybody in our audience gone to see or is going to see the new Alive movie that's launching? That's the one with the iPads that's out. I know it's coming to Minnesota here mid-August, and I plan on seeing that. Many of us have seen the short videos with the elderly man who is, pretty disconnected, and then they put the headsets on him and have him listen to music, and he's doing jazz and talking in full sentences and getting a big smile on his face. So I'm looking forward to the full-length film on that one. I think that'll be absolutely fabulous. Are you planning on going to that at all, Michelle, to be able to see that?
I hadn't heard of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to put it on the blog again. I know I put it out a while ago, but they hadn't listed where I think they were still lining up all the studios where it will be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there seems to be a nice shift in terms of elevation of the disease, and a lot of fun, creative things are coming to be. In fact, speaking of creative, if you didn't listen to last week's show, that was really quite interesting. We had Gary Glazner on with the Poetry Project and Dementia Arts, and he has a new book out about dementia arts and just, how fun that it can all be. So the book is quite good. It's got a lot of great examples, or what he calls recipes, to engage people, and so that's a great thing there. Salish is just saying that it'll be nice to have small sequence of the film to be shown in different places to start to get people interested, and it'll be nice to have some subtitles with the film so it will have a larger reach, which I agree. That would be absolutely wonderful to be able to do that. Silver Inning Foundation has opened, he said, a new 24/7 dementia home in Mumbai. So that's really exciting. Like I said, Salish has been doing just a ton of work here. I'm going to go ahead and pull in our second guest. We're just going to change things up here a little bit. So I've got Ann on the line, I believe. Let me see if we can get her with us. Ann, are you there?
I am. Hey, Lori. I've been listening.
Hi.
And I should call in just in case you wanted to change things around a little bit.
That is absolutely wonderful, and I so appreciate you doing that. Let me just introduce Ann to our audience here. Ann Campanella is the author of the memoir Motherhood, Lost and Found. She was formerly a magazine and newspaper editor, and her writing has appeared in local and national publications and literary journals, to best-selling series called A Cup of Comfort. She's also a poet, and her poetry has been featured on Garrison Keillor, which is pretty cool, and the Writer's Almanac, and twice she's received the Poet Laureate Award from the North Carolina Poetry Society. She's got a degree in English literature from the Davidson College, and she lives on a small horse farm in North Carolina with her family. So welcome, Ann. I appreciate you calling in as we're scrambling here, trying to get poor Felicia on the line, and hopefully it'll still work out here. But in the meantime, let's talk about you. Can you tell us, how you landed in the space of dementia? Can you give us a little background on yourself?
Sure, I would be glad to. I never dreamed that I would land in this space. I sort of imagined that my mother, who my book is about, would just go on into old age, and we would have a wonderful relationship and continue things as they were, with her slightly declining. But all of a sudden, at the age of early 70s, she just began to show some strange signs. I had no idea what was going on. This was in the early 1990s, and there really was not a lot of material out there, not a lot of resources. And so gradually, as she had more and more symptoms of all these strange behaviors, I just began journaling about it. I was with her, caring for her some of the time. My siblings were gathered around, and my father was at his wits' end trying to figure out what was going on. And just over time, we eventually realized that we needed to get her into a hospital, and as things sort of began to fall apart, and we had her diagnosed. And then we just sort of watched things unravel gradually, and at the same time, I think we came together as a family and began to realize that there were gifts in this very slow situation of losing someone that we loved.
Yeah, it is one of those things that I don't think anybody wishes to land in. That's for sure. That's for sure. And go ahead.
I didn't mention that at the same time I was trying to become pregnant, and I was going through a period of infertility, and this was at least a 10-year, maybe a 14-year period where I really wanted to become a mother. In fact, my husband and I had moved back to North Carolina after being away, and my parents lived on the coast, and we were sort of in central North Carolina. And I envisioned being able to share my family with my parents and just seeing them as wonderful grandparents. And then all of a sudden I was in this position of caring for my mom and yet wanting to be a mother, and all of the emotions of losing her and not being able to be a mother easily just sort of multiplied exponentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a difficult time. And when you're talking about, infertility, they always say, don't be stressed,
Right.
and then you land in the world of stress. It just makes it so, I would imagine, so much more difficult, and so many unknowns with everything. That has to be very, 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 very difficult period of time that you were in. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your memoir and what it was like for you to lose your mom, at the same time you're trying to become a mom yourself, and in struggling through kind of the series of life, as a whole. Can you give us some examples of what that was like?
Sure. One of the things, trying to be a mother or wanting to be a mother and seeing my mother decline made the idea of motherhood not quite as appealing, and also more appealing. It wasn't appealing because I saw just the difficulty and the grief of losing her step by step. But the appeal came because I also saw the incredible depth of bonds that we had, despite her changes and her unexpected behaviors. It was just so clear that I wanted to be there, as the rest of my family did, for her every step of this journey. I wasn't repelled. I was pulled closer. And then when I actually was successful and had a daughter, it just so happened that my mother, she had been 40 when she had me, and I was 40 when I had my daughter. So I was in the middle of this age continuum, and everything that I was doing for my mother, I was actually doing for my daughter. I was clipping fingernails. I was feeding. I was changing diapers for both of them, brushing teeth, wiping their mouths, all these little tiny things that you do. And so each moment was sort of intensified, because I would think it was very possible that my daughter could one day be in my position, and everything I was doing for my mother, my daughter might be doing for me. So there was almost this telescoping that just was happening as I was going through my days, and it just brought an intensity and a focus that, not that I always handled it well, but it made me have the intention of wanting to leave something beautiful despite the difficulty of this journey.
Yeah, it's just such an overwhelming process here. And if you don't mind, we finally have Vishaal on the line. Can I put you on hold and then pull you back in for the second portion? Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
I will see you later.
Okay, thank you. Well, Vishaal, you're here. We gotcha. How are you doing?
Yes, Lori.
Well, good.
Okay, I'm just taking the time to connect on Skype. It's strange. Yeah.
Okay.
How are you?
Doing good.
Hello.
Doing good. So I'm so glad that we have you. We've got it's cutting out a little bit, but we'll see what we can do here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the film and why you thought it was important to do this film, Life Flows On?
Lori, I was just doing one research on Alzheimer's in India to make one documentary, and then I realized that the situation is quite very serious, and when I realized that the attitude of the government sector and policymakers towards this issue, then I decided to make the film on it. And because in 2010, according to the government census in India, it's 3.1 million people have Alzheimer's in India. And the census is also questionable, because in rural India there is no setup of because we don't have that much setup of healthcare to trace out how many people there.
Vishaal, can you repeat that last sentence, because it really cut out? Your connection must not be real strong. So, but if you can try to just repeat that for us, that would be great.
Yeah, I was saying, Lori, especially in rural area, the situation is quite serious, because we don't have set, we don't have healthcare set to trace out how many actual, the data. What is the actual data of Alzheimer's patients in India? Besides that, there are different kind of dementia patients, and there is no Alzheimer's is quite a popular word, but there is no system trace out different kind of dementia patients. And because we don't have like much neurologists, only 600 in our whole country. And the neurotic like healthcare, all this healthcare is quite in a struggling phase. And the government sector, they always talk like that why to invest money on non-productive people, because I think that after 60 people become non-productive. So that would give an energy to make this film. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that attitude, that negative attitude of there.
Yep. Vishaal, I got a question for you. Do you have your headphones on by chance? Because we're just getting some feedback. It's kind of cutting in and out, and I'm just wondering if your headset would help with that at all. I know Salish is saying that there are 3.5 million people with dementia over there, and he said that there really isn't much for government support. But do you have your headset? Vishaal? Oh, he dropped off. We lost him. So I'm not quite sure. His connection was not very strong, and I apologize for that. We can't, when we're dealing with this, well, I'm sure he'll be calling back in here. I'm going to just go jump back to some comments that Salish was making. He was just noting that for him, this has been a struggle of life learning. He feels that Alzheimer's and dementia is one of the toughest diseases of mankind. It's not just the brain. It's about memory loss. It's about failure of activity of daily living and mood swings and language and grooming and incontinence and mobility. He says it's even more difficult in a country like India, not only due to the lack of awareness, but because of the diversity of their nation in terms of language and culture and religion and tradition and food habits and educational level and, quality. He says dressings and gender discrimination, community, class, caste. So he said that there's just so many different things that they're dealing with over there. He says, I now understand it's easy to talk and preach, but it's one of the most challenging pieces of work to be with somebody with dementia and care for them, coming and visiting and spending the day, with their residents at their elder care. He says, you'll be able to find out for yourself. He says, I pray to God, please don't give the disease to anyone. It's just so important for us to care together and to understand, I think, all of the different cultural diversities, that we have, that we need to deal with. And it sounds like Vishaal is back again with us. Vishaal, are you there?
Hello, Lord. Yeah, you're in.
Okay.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Well, we're glad to have you back. Can you tell us a little bit about what people can expect in the film? How long of a film is this? What is it going to cover?
The total duration of the film is around 1 hour and 45 minutes. And the film is doing quite well. It's quite like world cinema. Treatment is kind of like a world cinema treatment. But we do things important in this film, like we don't dramatize to maintain the actuality of the problem, to maintain the technicalities of disease, and we just want to transfer the actual awareness, so that we not dramatize things which we should not dramatize. Generally, we don't in our film industry, we take issues and we dramatize so much, so the level of awareness, it becomes quite chaotic. So we've never done that in this film. Second thing is, yeah.
Vishaal, Vishaal, I'm wondering, you're cutting out you're cutting out about every other word when you speak, and I'm wondering if when I pose a question, maybe I should have you type your answer out and then I read it, because it's really, really difficult to understand you, because your connection just isn't very strong apparently. And we're getting a lot now. It sounds like it's faded, so maybe I should have you talk quick and see if it works. But there was a lot of interference going on. So can you try stating that again? We'll try it one more time, and if not, then I might have you type out your answers and then me read it. But can you tell us what people can expect from the film again? Oh, I guess not. I guess we lost them all together. So that's why it got quiet. Okay, well, this is just kind of an interesting little interview process, but we'll just keep plugging along. Celicia's saying that they have really big expectations about the film. One question, he says, why the name is not in Hindi language, a national language. It could have an English line. I'm not really sure on that, and we can ask Valish to let us know on that. Why they chose the name, and once he gets back online again, we'll see. It looks like he's back again. Vishaal, how are you doing? You're back with us again?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
Network is bad.
Okay. So Vishaal,
Hello.
Vishaal, we really can't understand you. So I think what's best is for you to listen to the show. I'll pose a question and then you respond. And he got cut off again, so he's probably not hearing me once again. And then we'll see if we can get our questions answered. I'm really excited about the film and the trailer, and I want people to know how to be able to access this. And so I hope that we can do this kind of through a Skype communication here, and go that route instead. Michelle, are there any questions that you were interested in asking Vishaal? Michelle, was there any questions that you were interested in asking Vishaal?
What inspired him to make the film?
Okay. So we're going to try getting Vishaal on one more. He fell off again. He just does not have a good connection. So, Vishaal, we really need you just to utilize your chat box for Skype to communicate here. And I don't know if he can even hear any of this or if he's just losing everything. But we will still proceed here and see what we can do. And I'm just writing him a note to see if we can answer here to our questions. That might just be the best thing. Celicia's saying it will be a good film to be shown on TV channels. And Celicia, have you seen the film? And I'm communicating with Salish through his Skype chat box here. He's over in India as well, and it would be interesting to know if he's seen the whole film or just the trailer of the film. And we'll see if we can get connect once again with Vishaal. He's got to be so frustrating. I just can't believe it. He said no, he has not seen it yet. So not yet released. I believe that they were going to be releasing it here shortly, like the 10th of August. They were talking about, and I don't know if that is still the game plan or not. Felicia, I'm going to see if you are still here. It looks like you are on Skype. And I'm wondering, Michelle had posed a question, wanted to know if you could type out in your Skype chat box what inspired you to make the film. So, Vishaal, if you could answer that, what inspired you to make this film, and type that out in the chat box on Skype. And he might still be battling trying to get on. Here he is again. Vishaal?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay. We can't hear you on this. No, we cannot hear you on this. So what I want you to do is just to go offline, and we'll communicate. You can listen to the show, but answer through the Skype chat box, because we can't understand you and you keep dropping off. So if you want to go ahead and hang up, but listen to the show, and then type your answers out. That'll be the most effective way, because we really can't understand you. Okay?
Right, fine.
Okay. So I want you to hang up, and then we'll just communicate. Okay. So hopefully he was able to hear that. If his connection is as bad as it is for us, he might be having a difficult time. So again, we're going to ask him, what inspired him to make the film. And then I'll just have to read his answer back. So Alicia's saying the audiovisual is a good medium to reach out, and it's even good for the social cause. So I agree. I think film and music is just a brilliant way for people to be able to connect and to really be able to visualize. They've gotten, from what I've seen in the trailer, there's a couple of different scenarios that I think are quite powerful and will help people greatly understand some of the needs and the differences here. Let's see. He's starting to write, so we might get this. we might get some answers here yet, and see what's what. So Alicia's just saying that Vishaal has taken a very bold step, and he has. This has been a project I think he's been working on for about 3 years. He's just noted that 3.7 million people are suffering from the disease over in their country. And Vishaal, if you can let us know, what do I want to say? When the release is actually going to take place, that would be helpful. And then the next thing I guess I just want to pose is he says now they're pushing for a release in September, so that'll be good. And as he updates me, I will update everybody through the blog on that. How do you think the film can change people's attitudes towards the disease? Vishaal, how do you think the film can change people's attitudes towards the disease? Let's see, it looks like September 21st, Alicia's saying would be a good day to do the release because that's World Alzheimer's Day. He said right now they are showing how media tools like community radio can have an impact, which I definitely understand just because of our show here. But it really shows, I think, creativity, but it also shows very heartfelt family pieces in terms of awareness as well. Can you tell us, with the show, how do people in the U.S. how are they going to be able to see the film? How can they help get involved with the film? Celicia's just also noting that print media is very valuable as well. So let's see. He said, let's see, we're showing the film and we're trying to release it worldwide in theaters. So that would be great if any of our listeners have connections to theaters or satellite. Please, you can get a hold of me or you can get a hold of Vishaal directly, and then also home DVDs. So they're looking at attacking this from a lot of different angles. And can you clarify in terms of what language this will be spoken, and will there be subtitles with the film? So what language is the film going to be in, and will there be subtitles, Vishaal? And I know this process is a little slower and painful, so I appreciate everybody hanging in there. We, again, have no control over technology and connections when it comes to this. That's part of the deal. It's going to be British English, okay? And will there be subtitles at all? And some parts, let's see, are also, I don't know, he stopped writing, so we'll have to see what he's saying here. He says, yes, language, let's see, Celicia's saying, yes, language will be important, very important over there. He said titles in British English, he said. Okay, well, I guess a final question here in terms of the film itself, since you don't have a hard launch date in there, is there are there things that our audience can do to help you with this film at all? He's also noting that there are some parts that are Hindi and some that are British English there. So it'll be a little bit of a variety on that. Vishaal, are there things at all that our audience can do to help support the film? If you can let us know that would be great. And then I think we're gonna wrap up here on the film. And again, I apologize that we had such difficulty, and we'll pull Ann back in here in just a moment. They can talk about the film and create buzz. So if our audience is willing to, once we have some solid information for you, I'll push that out. And then if you can share that with others, that would be great. The more chatter we can get, the better. You can go to Vishaal's website, which is www.the V as in Victor, N as in Nick, F as in fun.com, thevnf.com. Or you can always email Vishaal as well at filmmaker, that's FILMMAKER at THEVNF.com. And he'd be more than glad to answer any questions at all that you have. Again, the name of the film is Life Flows On, and again, it's a beautiful, beautiful film. I'm going to go ahead and just put the website here in our chat box. It's also on our webpage. I appreciate you trying so hard to connect with us today, and I apologize that the connections weren't very strong. for you over there. But keep us posted, Vishaal, and we will definitely push things out as we get the information. And Salisha, I want to thank you so much for participating too. You're doing great work over there with Silver Innings, and really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. Vishaal is just saying that the film is really about 3 different characters suffering from dementia, and it's totally dedicated to the dementia patients themselves. So, again, thank you so much for your time. Very much appreciate it, and we will keep you posted. So I'm going to go ahead and pull Ann back into the show here. Ann, are you with us?
I am.
You are. You're just hanging in there with us today. What a day.
Yeah, I was just thinking how your conversation with Vishaal was like a metaphor for communicating with someone with Alzheimer's. You get little snips and pieces, and sometimes there's some clarity and sometimes there's not, but you just have to go with it.
Yep, that's all we can do. That's all we can do is just the best we can, and know that that's all we can do, So, well, I'm excited to have you back on the line with us again. And again, I apologize for the show usually isn't quite like this, but when we're dealing with international, once in a while we have glitches and.
I understand.
All we could do is the best we could do. So let's get back to your book, Motherhood Lost and Found. I found it fascinating. You have a beautiful writing style. I have to tell you that, and you did just such a nice job with your memoir. Can you tell us, when your mother did first show signs? What were they? And did she notice, or was it more family noticing? How did that all come to play?
That's a great question. I guess the family noticed first, but my mother was also very aware. Some of the signs were she was more forgetful than usual. I remember visiting her at home, and she had gotten some messages about missing some doctor's appointments, and that was not like her. She wasn't the most organized person, but if she made an appointment, she would usually make it. And she also had some phone calls from a friend who was, this friend was a little upset with her because she hadn't met her at a time they were planning to have coffee or get together. And that really upset my mom because she thought, she's always in tune to that kind of thing. She was very relationship-oriented. And so those were the first inklings. And then each visit home, I would see different things, like there might be some stacks of towels sitting on the coffee table, or in my dresser drawer of my childhood room, I'd open it up and one of her shoes might be in there. And so there were just these odd things. And then I noticed my mom being very sort of secretive about some of her papers and like her address book. She would take it and hold it to her tightly and sort of walk around and then look like she was trying to hide it. And I at the time, when I looked back, I see, those are definite signs. But at the time, I just thought, well, that's strange. But as time went on, my mom did, and this was so heartbreaking, she knew that something wasn't right. And I can remember sitting with her on her bed one day and her just sort of taking my hand and looking in my eyes and saying, I don't know what's wrong, Anne. Something is wrong with me, and I don't understand. And I didn't know what was wrong either. And at that time, there was so little information. In fact, I can remember sitting in my living room around midnight with my laptop on my knees, surfing for any website that had the word Alzheimer's in it. And I was just desperate for somebody else's story because, people didn't talk about this, and it was so rare to just have somebody share. And I guess it was because of the shame, and people are just sort of normally private about their older loved ones kind of falling apart. But my mother was actually somebody who would have encouraged conversation about this. And I guess that's one reason I felt comfortable sharing this story, even though parts of it would certainly be embarrassing to her. She was one of the deepest proponents, or people who are agree with letting the word out and educating people. And she would have said, go for it, Anne. And so that was really something that encouraged me to get the book down. And I also wanted to share this story because I so wanted to hear somebody else's personal story, step by step, of how they lived through the loss of somebody that they love so dearly, and step by step, piece by piece, as things are breaking apart. I thought, how does somebody do this? And I didn't know, and I wanted that. I thought, well, if I can't find it, maybe I can provide it in some small way for somebody. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I
No, and I think it is. It's once you're in this space, you really you're there, and you can't change it. But it seems like everybody that I meet pretty much wants to help out the next guy. Coming into this space, which I think is so nice. That people care that much, because it's a painful process. Salish is asking a question. He said, can you ask Anne to tell us the difference between mother and daughter care? What were some of the good things that maybe came of this, and what were the really tough pieces? And how did your relationship change?
That is an interesting thing to ponder. The caring for my mother was painful in the sense that there was always a part of me knowing that it could have been different, even though I wanted to live in the moment and be there for her. There was this grief and awareness that she could have been this incredible grandmother that she was before the disease came. And so that was always present. And as I cared for my daughter, there's the hope. My daughter is moving towards life, and my mother is moving towards death. But what was interesting is at the intersection of caring for both of them, I can remember times that are just so special, and they stay with me, when I would take my daughter to visit my mom. And my daughter would be, as a toddler, she'd be fascinated with my mother's wheelchair or the little stuffed bird that my mother loved to pet. And my mother, in the same way, was fascinated with my daughter. And she didn't know who she was. In fact, sometimes she would say, "Who's that little boy?" And obviously it was a little girl, and she didn't know it was her own granddaughter. But she would look at my daughter, and she would, reach out and touch her, and my daughter would look at her, and their eyes would meet. And it was as if they knew they connected to each other, but neither of them had the words to say it. And so that was really special. And another memory that I have is my daughter loved apple juice, and so I would sometimes lure her to the nursing home with saying, hey, well, go get some apple juice with me, Mom. And so she would be excited about that. And she also loved to push her grandmother in the wheelchair when she got a little bit older. But one of the fun things that they would do is they could throw the ball back and forth to each other. My mother had this big, it was like a soft globe, and my daughter would, at maybe age 4, throw it to my mom, and my mom, she couldn't really speak in sentences, but she had, her reflexes were good, and she would catch, and then she would just throw it back. And so they were playing these games and able to share some moments, even though there was so much loss. There was some wonderful connections also.
Yeah, I think, my daughter did that as well with my mom, because she only knew my mom, with dementia. And so she, my daughter never had the loss.
Yeah.
And she just looked at Grandma with this innocence and fun, and they just kind of played together. And Danielle never saw or never missed, because she didn't have it to begin with. And so for me, it took me a little while to kind of adjust that they both played intently together. They were, they both liked coloring, and they were both proud of their pictures just as equally and stuff. And it was really cute. It made me realize how deep their relationship was, and how beautiful it was, and it made me learn how to kind of play and let go, and not look at loss, but look at the joy that's there, just kind of how my daughter did. And that was a pretty beautiful lesson.
That is beautiful.
To learn
and
on
yet,
that.
As you know, it comes and it goes, because there are, both the loss and the joy. It's funny, sometimes I can remember just pausing in the flow of a day and thinking, I am so grateful for my life and for my daughter and for my mother and for what we have. And just, I guess the awareness of the Alzheimer's kind of, it keeps you aware that life is brief and that we only have each moment. And yet, at the same time, there would be times I'd drive home from the nursing home and just put my head on the steering wheel. I'd pull over and I'd just start sobbing. So there are both sides, and you know it well, I'm sure, as do the listeners.
Yeah, and both sides have to be validated and appreciated, I think, for what they are. And, for me, I'm a firm believer that you can't have, great joy without great loss. I mean, you can't have highs without lows, and so otherwise they lose. Each side loses its value. It's kind of that barometer of weighing things out that's so critically important. To
I definitely felt my joy in life deepened as I allowed myself to feel the depth of my grief. And did you expect that when you went in? I mean, when you were kind of in the balls of that loss? Definitely not.
Yeah, me neither.
I just, in fact, I remember going to bed at some nights and just praying that God would just get me through each day, because it was just so confusing and so scary and so awful, it seemed at the time. I wasn't always able to see the beauty, and I just, particularly in the beginning. And as you know, in those early stages, and with my mom, as she was aware of herself not being herself, she was so emotionally distraught, and that was the hardest for me, to see her just so upset, because once she progressed further in her disease, she sort of possessed a calmness and a peace, and so it was much easier to live with that. But the days when she was days just left me a wreck.
Mhm. Okay. Vishaal, I was just noting, in his film, one of part of the film is about a mother and daughter's relationship too, and its kind of central character is a young woman whose mom has Alzheimer's, and it's very sensitive. And he's saying that your book seems like it'd be very inspiring, and he's interested in asking, when you decided to write your book, how much time did it take you to pull it together, and knowing that this isn't your first time to the rodeo show, that you've written before and you've written a lot, that might make a difference too. But maybe it was different because it is such a personal journey.
Yes, I'm smiling here as I hear this question, because this is maybe hard for some people to absorb, but the whole process of this book was about 20 years. And I began the book with journals in 1993, and I was just filling up journal after journal after journal. And as a writer, that's what I do and how I process the world. And it wasn't until I'd filled up a few of the journals and was partway into this that I thought, okay, I think this is more than just my journaling. This is a story that I need to shape into something that other people could benefit from. And the years that my mother was going up and down and struggling, I was able to document all of that pretty easily. I had the time. And then when my daughter finally came around, the caring for both of them, I continued to write, but it was only in snippets here and there. And then I began editing and editing and editing. I had so many versions of this book. But it wasn't until my daughter is now 12, and I began teaching a writing class to her and one of her good friends because she wanted to write her own books. And as I was doing that, I thought, okay, now it's time for me to get serious and get this book. I need to do more than teach. I need to live what a writer's life is, because my mom was also a writer, and so I felt like I was sharing some of her life and her joy through this writing class. And as I did that, I was able to inspire my daughter. She actually has a couple of her own mystery books that are out, and it was an amazing journey to sort of pull the threads of my mom's writing and mine and my daughter's all together. So yes, it was a long, long process, and I feel like I emptied every bit of my lifeblood into it, and I'm thankful that it's done.
Yeah, it's a, I have not finished my book. I'm working on a couple of them, but I can appreciate when you said it. It's 20 years. I was on the journey for 30, and it's amazing what you learn, or even what you think you learn, and then a few years later, it kind of twists and turns and molds on you, and you kind of like, oh, well, that isn't quite what I learned. It was really this,
right.
and you
need to look through the lens of time and as you say, see those shifts and changes, because you learn so much more about yourself and your relationships than you can ever imagine.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that you have you've grown as a person yourself through this process, and as a better person, I would imagine?
I hope so. I definitely. It's kind of hard to talk about yourself in these terms. I was the worst of daughters and the best of daughters and everything in between. It's funny because I feel like I put my mother through hell as a teenager, as most teenagers probably do. I mean, I didn't want to clean my room. I didn't want to do the dishes. I didn't want to do stuff, and she just had to push and push and push. And through the process of writing this book and living this journey, one time I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I've finally made up with my mom, made up for all those dinners that I didn't want to help her with, or things that I didn't want to do, now that I'm cooking for her and cleaning for her. And I wanted to do all those things really because I guess, as a mother-daughter in these relationships, you know that you are always, or, you're never being the person that you want to be all the time. And so you always have things you want to make up for. And I wasn't a horrible person, but I was not the daughter that I would have wished for her. I mean, she was such a dear and loving mother. She deserved all the best. And, I gave her a whole mixed bag of things. And so I would say I've learned a lot. My compassion has definitely grown, but I'm still a mix of good and bad. I am who I am, and I wish I could always be. Maybe I have more insight now, but I'm not. I'm nowhere near the perfect, loving person that I would like to be. Maybe my aspirations are deeper, but I still have the same stumbling blocks and same selfish behaviors. And as you know, living with a child also reminds you of your own foibles. So. Yep.
And if you don't remind you, they will remind you for you.
Exactly.
So Lisa has a question for you. He said, what is one suggestion you have for family caregivers who are stressed and broken with the day in and day out of caring for someone with dementia?
Wow. Well, I have a couple suggestions. The first one that came to mind when I heard this question was try to get a break. I remember for myself being in a situation when my mother had sort of been on the brink of dying for, this sounds crazy, but for 5 or 6 years. And by the end of that period, I was a basket case. I was just, in fact, my mother, she had fallen out of her wheelchair face first. She was in a nursing home, and she'd been in the hospital and had a huge bruising all over her face. And I went through that experience and just felt so awful that I hadn't been there, awful that the nursing home had not done what they needed to do to keep her from falling. But mostly I was blaming myself that I just had not been there day after day, that I couldn't save her from this. And then about 2 weeks later, she had another fall, and it was the same thing. And so by the end of that experience, I was just, if I'd been blaming myself the first time, I was blaming myself even more the second time. And I probably was at the brink of a mental breakdown. But what saved me, not only wonderful friends who just gathered around me, but finally the realization that I could not save my mom from this. And knowing that and trusting really that God had her in his arms, and no matter what awful things were happening, of course I wanted to be there and do what I could, but I needed to care for myself and step away a little bit and just try to rejuvenate my own spirit, and then I could be there for her more fully. So that would be the number one suggestion. don't think that it's up to you to fix everything or save your loved one from this, because it's not, you're not in control of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing, if they're not part, and I'm sure the listeners have all different, varied experiences, but being part of a community, and my church community was hugely influential for me. I mean, they gathered around me, they prayed for me, they brought me meals, they knew what was going on, and just having friends who cared deeply and were invested. My writing community was also that way. They all knew, and I could email them and just tell them quickly what was going on, if there was a high or a low, and they were right there with me to celebrate or grieve with me, and that often just kept me going. So those two.
Yeah, the support is so important, and I think so many times people do isolate themselves, and it's just so. And I mean, I was one of those where I was too busy, I didn't have time, and I thought it was selfish for me to take time, and I didn't have a clue how empty I had gotten. Mm-hmm. And then when you realize it, it's like, okay, I'm coming and filling up once a week now. I'm going to make sure I get my friend fix and my reboost and belong to life again, because I kind of shut. I don't know if you did this, but I kind of shut life out, and I created this very private world that I thought I was in control of. I let myself believe that I had all these powers that I really didn't have.
Yeah.
And looking back, it's very silly, but I got very isolated and very intense, trying to do the right thing, not realizing that I was suffocating myself and probably my poor mom and dad in the process, of it.
I think it's natural, Lori, because there is so much to do, and so I know for me, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, my first reaction is, okay, I've got to cut off all these extras. But the extras are really, the life-sustaining forces. And I was very fortunate to have a supportive family and siblings who were, right there in there with me. And, we would be on the phone daily sometimes multiple times during the day. And that was such a gift. But I do think it's natural to sort of cut yourself off. And if you're in the position of having to caregive daily, and if the person is in that state where they are agitated, I mean, it truly is like caring for an overgrown toddler, and you've got to be on the go and aware every second of the day. And I remember there was a time I couldn't talk on the phone with if my mother was in the room or nearby, because she was so nervous and kind of paranoid that I was talking about her. And even though that might be what I was doing, that would just upset her further. And so that's also an isolating factor. It's hard.
Yeah, Celicia's asking, did you ever reach out to like the Alzheimer's Association or Foundation or any of the formal organizations that are out there for dementia?
I did. In fact, the Alzheimer's Association was probably the main one that was available at that time, which was in the early 1990s. And the best thing, or one of the best things that I got from them, was basically a list of sort of typical behaviors and how to handle them. Just having the affirmation that it was okay to go along with them when your loved one is, off in another galaxy somewhere. And my father, for instance, if she was talking about something in 1940, he would try to bring her back to the present. And I was able to bring this list of behaviors and coping mechanisms to him and say, Daddy, you can't do that. You need to say, it's okay, Mom, it's okay. Sure, we'll go see your dad, even though he died 60 years ago. So the Alzheimer's Association was very helpful to me in that.
Good. Yeah, that's such a common issue in terms of what do I say when someone's passed away and the looping that happens. And, just getting people to understand it's not about right or wrong. It's not about the truth. It's about comfort, and because you can't rationalize. And that's hard for a lot of us to let go of. With that process, I know for myself, it wasn't easy, and it was kind of a trial and error, and then it's like, then I finally figured it out. This really
it took me a little while, but it's funny. I think I was I could do it a little quicker than some of my siblings because I'm a writer, and I think I'm also just a little more wily than they are, and they are so sweet and honest and upfront that they just wanted to, give Mom the truth, whereas I could very quickly sort of go into this fantasy world and just join her there. And because of that, she started to rely on me for certain things, and she distrusted them in certain at certain periods. And I would think, this is just not right. They are such wonderful people, but yet she's relying on me because I'm able to join her fantasy world. But that was just the way it was at different times. And it's just it's interesting and it's a challenge because I guess we all have to find our own way of how do we communicate and how do we some people just are not comfortable with not telling the truth. But I was okay with pushing that aside and thinking, this is not about truth. This is really about her comfort.
Yep. Yeah. Now, there's another question wanting to know if you ever did any type of meditation or alternative things like music for yourself, as stress busters, or maybe you're an avid runner, or you're on a farm, maybe just hop on a horse and go. Did you have some stress busters for yourself?
My horseback riding at the time was, and not just horseback riding, but the book actually has the backdrop of the book is my horse farm. I taught horseback riding lessons, and I had my own horse. But just being on the farm, I would take time to escape. I'd go down to the barn, listen to the horses eating. I'd stare out at the horses in the pasture, and that just soothed my soul and fed me, and just kind of gave me a sense of, all right, all is right with the world. Nature is continuing in its course. And riding, of course, it just got my mind off of the present craziness that I was living through. So yes, horses were a huge gift to me during that time.
Well, and I have some friends who have actually done some healing with their horses. They say that the horses just know your stress level, and when you kind of lean into them, they just kind of take it, and there's this quiet time, and then the people say they can actually feel it leave their body, and then the horse goes off and just kind of kicks and sputters and spouts and gets rid of the energy. And I don't know, I have not seen it personally, but I've had a couple of people explain that to me, and I'm like, oh, what a beautiful thing.
I got goosebumps as you were talking, because that's really the relationship that I have always had with horses. Even growing up, if there was stress, as a teenager, going out to the stables, I would just lean into my horse. I would just have my hand on his neck, and his eyes, his presence, there's something majestic about the horse. That whole presence would just absorb whatever was going on, and it did feel like it was not totally leaving me, but it was being shared in this way, and in the sharing, it was as if the horse was carrying some of my burden, and it choked me up actually to say that, because I've had that gift throughout my life of horses doing that for me.
Yeah, they said that when they leaned into the horse kind of by the neck, they actually wrapped their head around their neck and just like nuzzled in, just like this intense cuddle, and it was just unbelievable. They said absolutely, you got this big, huge animal, and it just melted their hearts. And was just so compassionate and so kind. And, I know with dogs, I know my dogs can tell any mood anybody's in before they even walk in the door. They just seem to have an awareness, of things. And I think all of us have that ability, but in the rush of everyday life, we tend to forget about it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a poem called How to Grieve that I wrote after my father died, and it was an experience that I had that I just wrote up, where I went down to the barn and I sat down in one of the pastures because I was feeling so numb, and a horse, it was actually a neighbor's horse, but he was in our pasture, he just gradually and very slowly came and walked down and sort of stood beside me, and eventually he could feel whatever I was feeling, and I was feeling sort of nothing at the time. I wanted to grieve, but I didn't know how. And as he came up to me, and he put his muzzle close to me, and eventually actually licked me, I think, and just as you were describing before, he took everything that I was feeling, and then he ran off, and it was just the most beautiful experience. So yes, I definitely feel like horses and all animals, particularly cats and dogs, just because I've been around them, they have that incredible intuitiveness. And it's such a gift.
Yeah, well, and I think, when you're going, I think one of the toughest things about this disease can be that feeling of isolation or loneliness that no one understands, and part of it is no one understands because we don't tell them, it's not a comfortable environment to share. The list can go on so many different levels, that it's very, very interesting to see and to be able to watch. And so if it's a pet, or if it's a person, it really doesn't make any difference when you just don't feel alone.
Yes, absolutely.
It's just huge. Terry is noting a lot of the time the need of the caregiver is to be on their own. And she says wanting an Alzheimer's person to be what the caregiver needs sometimes overrides the compassion of living in a non-linear reality of the Alzheimer's person. That's really true. A lot of times we're trying to get that person with dementia back in our box, our little comfortable suitcase, that we know the territory of, and it doesn't work that way. We have to jump out into the playground and rework our design. And I've said this many times on the show, sometimes we try so hard to make them fit our routine, we have no idea how much frustration it's causing us and them, and how much time we're burning when we're the ones that can change. And then it all of a sudden everybody feels in control and comfortable if we adapt. But we're so scared of making changes. It's something here in the U.S. We're set in our routines, and we're worried about other people's perceptions. I mean, there's so much stuff that comes into play with that. And for me personally, and I don't know about you, Ann, but the teaching and the learning curve of flexibility and spontaneity and focusing on joy and comfort was huge for me in this process. And I always thought I was kind of a multitasker, and I'm looking at things from a zillion different angles. And I was, but I always had a preferred route,
Yes.
And I always
don't we all? Yes.
And I tried to get everybody in my life to go on my preferred route.
Yes.
And I really, even my daughter says sometimes to me now, gosh, it really doesn't matter to you, does it? She just does. And I'm like, no, because, you can do things in so many different ways and still have the same outcome. It's like, what is the outcome that you're looking for? And sometimes we forget about how our reactions are going to cause an outcome we don't want, because we're so fixed on our way is the right way that we forget about the outcomes. But when you focus on the outcomes of what do you want the relationship to look like, it totally shifts things, or it did for me, in a big way. Can you tell us, why Lake George, New York was so significant to your mother, and how did that play into her illness?
Yes, I would love to. Can I first just say that I had a memory of something that you were just talking about, how I thought I had this great idea of how I would bring my mother to the beach. I'll get to Lake George right after this. And we would have this wonderful just mother-daughter moment. And I was on that path. I knew what was right. I was going to do this. This was going to be so special. And I did get her there, wheelchair and all, wheeled her up onto a pier so that it was a lovely spring day. And I thought, oh, she's just going to love this. She'll get to see the water. It's going to revive her. I will have my mother back for a few moments. And, of course, you can imagine it turned out to not be that at all. I got her up on the pier, and actually my sister had come with me. And at first my mother's cold. Then she has to go to the bathroom, even though she has diapers and she doesn't usually know she needs to go. She had to go, and so we had to take her back. And it just turned out to be the most difficult experience. It was not anything what I had dreamed of. And so the next day I actually adjusted my expectations and thought, okay, instead of that, let me just take my mom for a little drive and stop somewhere and let her just be who she is. I was all ready to talk to her, even though she could hardly speak at this point. And we were parked actually overlooking the sound of Morehead City, and it was a place that we used to walk to all the time when she was healthy. And we sat in the car, and I started to say something, and I looked over, and Mom was sleeping. And I thought, okay, once again I've made this big effort to do something special for me, and Mom is doing what she needs to do. And I thought, let me just be quiet, let her rest. And then when she woke up, we did have kind of a special interchange. But it was it really needed to be on her terms and not mine. So, I just totally get what you were saying before, and how, we, in this society particularly, feel like there's a formula for everything. But one of the things I do feel like I have learned and need to continue learning is that the formula goes out the window with Alzheimer's. And really with life, there is no formula. And if we can believe that, I think we're in a much better position. Now back to Lake George. Lake George was my mother's most beloved place in the world. She grew up there, spending her summers. Her mother and father lived in New York City while she was a child, and they would take the train up in the summer, she and her mother and siblings, and they would spend the summer while her father would work in New York City. And ever since that time, she and my family, we would spend our summers, not our whole summer, we'd spend a week or two vacationing at Lake George. And it's a beautiful place. Mountains ring the lake. The water is clear. You can see all the way down to the bottom in many places. And my mother just knows this place intimately. And as she was becoming more and more ill and losing touch with reality, basically, she often thought she was at Lake George. She would say things that made us know she was, in her mind, sailing or waiting for her father to take her on a hike through the woods to go pick up arrowheads from Joshua's Rock. And so that place, it was a comfort to her, and it was a comfort to us, her family, to know that she was returning to this place. Even though it was confusing and scary to know she wasn't with us, to know that she was there, it was a comfort. And we took her there for her very last trip when she was, I believe she was 80 years old. And she was in pretty bad shape by then, advanced Alzheimer's, spending most of her time in her wheelchair, not able to speak she could speak but not complete sentences most of the time. And during this trip, she really came back to life for brief periods. She would sit on the sun porch. She owned an old house up there, and there was a porch that overlooked some of the property, and you could see the water from a distance. And we would sit out there, and she would listen to the birds. And she actually got up from her wheelchair and began walking around. And she went on canoe rides with my brother. And one time a cousin came by, and he was just visiting her and entertaining her with stories of aunts and uncles who had lived at Lake George, because we have generations of our family have lived in this same area for years. And by the end of his visit, he came over and whispered to me, "Your mom's in better shape than I am." And I just remember thinking, this is amazing that this place has incredible restorative powers for her. And yet, if she wasn't around family and familiar things, she might be walking around the house without clothes on. I mean, there's just no telling what she would do. But that place and those memories somehow sustained and nurtured her, and it was such a gift that it brought back pieces of her that we thought had been lost. And so at least for that brief period of time, we had the gift of of our mom back, and it was amazing.
Oh, cool. That's a neat story, and I think there's lots of those out there if we look for them, but so many times we don't always look for the stories at hand and the influence of our environment and what it does, for us. It's just a huge piece in terms of what can happen. And again, bringing that calmness and lucidity, back into our lives, and who knows what causes it, but just being grateful for those moments. I have a friend, Harry Urban, who has been living with dementia, and he has a favorite place that he just loves to go and visit, and I want to say it's in Pittsburgh, and it's skipping my mind right now, but he just says he's just so at home there. It's just so comfortable that he just feels like he comes alive every time he goes there, and that his dementia kind of goes on vacation when he's in that space. And so it's kind of neat, and I think that we need to be aware of times like that and situations, because it can be a brilliance to everyone. We have another question here that if you don't mind answering. They were wondering about, if your mom ever had to wear Depends or adult diapers, and was that a problem, and how did you handle that at all? They have run into problems with both male and females having a difficult time with that. Is that something that you ever encountered with your mother with incontinence?
Yes, and it was definitely a problem. My mom had incontinence. She had near incontinence for many years, just from having 4 children. But once she got dementia, it became much worse, and she basically refused to wear diapers. So she was wearing Depends, but those they were not enough. And there were times that one time in particular, and this is on in the excerpt that is on your website or the blog site, where she was visiting me, and I was just drowning in wet clothes because I couldn't get her in diapers, and she was constantly wetting herself. She was wetting the bed. It was a nightmare. I mean, it was awful. And the way we dealt with it, sort of a non-way, that same week we had her made an appointment to go to the hospital for an evaluation. And we had left the house without enough Depends, and she actually had an accident at the hospital, and the doctor who was going to see her sort of looked at us like, what's going on here? And I was at the end of my rope at that point, and my brother was sort of like, well, that's kind of Anne's responsibility, since I was the girl in the family. And eventually a nurse came and was able, because it was someone who was not in the family, he was able to get her in a diaper. And since that time, she began to wear diapers. But we as family members could not get her into one. She just simply refused, and it just took another outside person to sort of, I guess, do it matter-of-factly, like, this is what you need, and she was willing to go along. But it was a crazy time.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I remember when we were transitioning with my mom, it was just the embarrassment, and she didn't want that, and everyone's going to know, and then it just got to a point where she stopped fighting it. And I think for my mom, actually, she got to a point where she didn't she didn't feel that it was embarrassing anymore. Her, I talk about when she hit the stage when her ego left the building, and then things were much easier to deal with. But we kind of went through that with the whole doing the bra and the independence, and she couldn't do it, and she'd get mad and struggle, and you have all those little things that just change over time, and you want to be dignified, and you want them to be safe and clean and stuff. But it's a tough piece. It's a tough road to hoe sometimes with that. Is there? I can't believe we only have about 7 minutes left. Is there another excerpt that you would like to share with our audience at all? The book is just a beautiful book. Again, it's called Motherhood, Lost and Found.
Oh, I do have one I would love to read, and it's actually it comes right after the excerpt that's on your blog. And I will just go ahead and start reading. It's my mother is staying with me because she is getting ready to go to the hospital, and I don't know what's going on. I just know that she's not normal, and I'm in the midst of trying to do my normal life. The next day, I have a deadline for an article. It's about a woman who rides dressage. She recently moved to the area and was long-listed for the United States Equestrian Team. Mom knows about horses and dressage. She picks me up at the stables almost every day from the time I was 10 until I turned 15. We sit on the couch and I tell her about the article. We talk about my old pony. She remembers how Cochise used to stand in the aisle with his eyes closed as I brushed him. She closes her own eyes and stretches her arms out in front of her, mimicking my pony. She always does this when she talks about Cochise. There's a peaceful, relaxed smile on her lips. When I outgrew my pony, she started riding bigger horses. Mom began taking lessons once a week on Cochise. She told me she loved those trail rides with Mrs. Moxon, the woman who taught her to ride. She would walk or trot slowly through the Panama jungle, listening to the exotic birds. Cochise always took care of her. Maybe it was one of the few times she felt free of family obligations. Talking about horses seems to calm her. Pressing my hand on her shoulder, I tell her I need to work on the article for just a few minutes, and we can visit some more after I'm done. She gets up and starts picking up the breakfast dishes on the table. Mom, don't worry about those. Oh, it's no problem, she answers, opening the refrigerator door and various drawers. I wonder where I'll find dirty dishes when she's gone. I hear her at the sink, turning water off and on, fiddling with the knobs on the dishwasher, opening and closing more drawers. When I can stand it no longer, I get up and lead her back to the couch. She does not want to stay there. She keeps glancing toward the bedroom, the bathroom, pointing to things I can't see outside the window. Finally, I resort to reading her draft of the article to keep her sitting still. She listens politely for a few minutes, then turns her head as if she has just remembered something. She gets up and wanders back into the kitchen. Mom, can I read this to you one more time? Maybe you can tell me if it sounds okay. Sure, dear. She makes a valiant attempt to focus. Her forehead wrinkles and her eyes narrow. Like a hyperactive child trying to be good, she presses her hands into her lap, anchoring her body to the cushion. It's the first time she's been still all day. Her eyes close and her head falls back against the couch. She breathes softly. The phone rings and Mom jolts awake. It's someone from Duke Hospital. The person on the phone asks if my mother is in the room. I try to speak as if I'm talking about someone else. Yes, that's right, I say, smiling at Mom and placing my hand on her arm. She smiles back at me and covers my hand with hers. I answer a few more questions obliquely, but manage to arrange a time for Mom to see the doctor. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. with Dr. Gold. Yes, thank you very much. My voice is formal, businesslike. Tension from the past weeks and months lifts as I imagine the silver-haired man wearing large glasses, sitting behind a desk, listening to my mother tell her stories. He will be kind and thoughtful. He'll ask her to stay so he can observe her for a while. The doctor will make some slight adjustment to her medication, and within a few weeks, my mother will become herself again. I will be able to sleep, and my family's life will return to normal. We're all set, I say, hanging up the phone. Mom cocks her head to the side, stares at me, and asks, "Have you seen my daughter?"
Wow. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. That was very, very brilliant. The book is absolutely wonderful that Ann Campanella has written, Motherhood, Lost and Found. I highly suggest that you get the book. And what's the best website for them to go to? Is that your own website there at AnnCampanella.com?
They can go to that website, www.anncampanella.com, or the book can be purchased on Amazon also.
Okay.
Either way.
And those links are on our page for the radio show and also on the blog. Well, I thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to following your other writings.
Thank you, Lori. This was such a pleasure just to talk about this whole situation.
Great. Have a wonderful week. Thank you. And I want to also thank our audience and Vishaal from India trying so hard to be part of the show today. We'll talk to you next week.
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.